Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. It's still early, so I'd like some energy up in the room. Good morning again. As she has mentioned, I'm Grace Njiru from Nairobi. I work for KPMG, but I'm here representing the Mastercard Foundation Fund for Resilience and Prosperity. Our team introduced us to the fund yesterday. I know they made a presentation yesterday, and we have a booth right outside. But as my role, specific role on that program is market studies lead. And as part of that, we've been working to identify the challenges that SMEs face in accessing new markets and in their growth journey. And access to markets remains a key challenge that comes up in the 20 countries that we are implementing the program. And so I'm excited to have this discussion today, and I'm going to invite my colleagues who will be joining me for this panel. So I'll start with Mr. Ezekiel Jatau, the CEO of Palm Valley, Nigeria. Welcome on stage. Let's welcome him, please. Join me. Thank you. And then I will have Joshua Oluokun, who is the head of Agri-Business in SE Holdings and is based in South Africa. Welcome on stage as well. And then lastly, I do have Dr. Emmanuel, who is the Director, Program Development and Commercialization at the African Agriculture Technology Foundation. Welcome on stage. So we'll be having this discussion, and we'll look forward to your interaction and questions towards the end. All right, thank you and welcome on stage. I'd like to start with Ezekiel, and this is because I know that Palm Valley, Nigeria does work with smallholder farmers, and I know as part of that interaction with them, you do get to observe, firsthand and also get firsthand feedback from them on what some of the challenges are that they face in trying to access new markets, and maybe you could share some of those with us and also share how some of these challenges could possibly be addressed.
Thank you very much, Grace. Good morning. My name is Ezekiel Jatau, and I'm the CEO of Palm Valley, Nigeria Limited. Probably let me just use a few minutes to describe what we do. Palm Valley, Nigeria is a business support organization. We are based in Kaduna, and our focus is agri-business. For the past 4 years, our focus has been on supporting smallholder rural women to increase their productivity as well as livelihood. We have other interventions or programs that we are running. We are grantees of AGRA. You recall yesterday the commissioner from Niger State did say something about AGRA being present in Niger State. Palm Valley is one of the grantees under the Gender Consortium. We are also sub-implementer of a program called WOFAN Icon 2, Integrated Community-Led Network of Hope. It's funded by Mastercard. Palm Valley also is a sub-implementer. For the AGRA project, we have onboarded about 50,000 women for the past 2.5 years in Kaduna State as well as Niger State. Under the WOFAN Icon 2 project, Palm Valley has supported about 250,000 since the project started. So we have onboarded women for that very project, and we are based in Kaduna, Nasarawa, and Benue State. But more importantly, why we are here is because of a project that we are also implementing. We call that one SWAY, which I'm going to explain it much later. So we are supporting the smallholder farmers through input credits. And that is, somebody has asked me, why are we all interested in women? I told a person a story, sometimes where I work in a project. And when the project ended, we had some funds left. And then we said, okay, these funds, we're going to give it to the women group as well as the male group. And we gave them 3 million naira, Nigerian naira then. And the women went and invested this money, whereas the men went and shared the money. Today, as I'm talking to you, we are still working with that particular group, and their turnover today is in millions of naira. Exactly. So, because of that, we said, okay, if we want to invest in agriculture, can we target women? And that was how we come about working with women today. So, if you look at the labor force in Nigeria today, about 70% are in the rural communities providing agricultural support services. In 2019, PVNL decided to support the production of various agricultural produce in the country. But before then, we carried out a survey, and then we carried out also a need assessment at the various communities in which we want to work with. We did that, and we realized that most of the smallholder farmers are underserved. They lack access to quality inputs. They lack access to infrastructure, like we have been saying here. They lack access to good agronomic practices, that is modern farming techniques. And they also lack access to accessing funds. So they were financially excluded. So we carry out that baseline, we carry out also needs assessment, and we come out with a model to support the smallholder farmers women. How did our model work? We realized again that most of these smallholder farmers are unstructured. So if we really need to get that advantage of, pulling them together to achieve results, we need to form them into trust groups. So that's how we started forming them into trust groups, and then we linked them up with financial institutions for the credit facilities in which we have been providing for them for the past 4 years. As of today, I can tell you that Palm Valley is boasting of about 1 billion naira loan portfolio that we have been supporting over 10,000 community partners. Sorry to use that word, is what we have really coined now for our smallholder farmers, because we are not looking at them as we are giving them handouts, but we are looking at them as partners. All right, so we are now calling our smallholder farmers community partners. So we have supported over 10,000 community partners through input credit. What are those infrastructural deficiencies that we have? It's warehouses, and then poor road network, even to the marketplaces. Because of that, Palm Valley decided to construct warehouses at strategic areas in partnership with other organizations, including government. That one we did to address the excess produce that the farmers produce every year. So by that, we are already producing market for these community partners. How do we increase productivity? We look at the knowledge gap. So we partner again with other institutions to provide capacity building, to train them on modern farming techniques. One other areas which we realized during our baseline survey is that most of our smallholder farmers or community partners will always want to use their safe seed for production. And some of us that are agri experts here, we know that by the time you are using safe seeds, your productivity becomes very, very low. And therefore, we have to consciously create that awareness that seed is the #1 input in agricultural production, because if you have poor seed, no matter how many bags of fertilizer that you apply on your farm, you are only wasting time. So we have been able to educate our smallholder farmers, our community partners, to adopt the use of improved seed. We have also linked them up to mechanization. If you look at the whole value chain, production by smallholder farmers is capital intensive, is very, very high. The cost of production is very high because they don't use technology. And if you add that up now, at the end of the day, after harvest, you realize that the profit margin is very, very lean. So by the time we introduce them to technology, they have that certainly reduces, you know, their cost of production and then increases their income. So we do all those across all the locations that we are that Palm Valley is working. Now let me fast forward to tell us the model of the SWAY project that we have been working. Probably is going to also assist others who are going into that kind of business. We access the funds through a bank, and I think I should mention the bank here because they have been very, very supportive to us. It is Sterling Bank, and they are using the funds supported by Mastercard, and we are getting the funds at single digit. So we leverage on that to support the smallholder farm. There is no bank now in Nigeria that will give loan at single digit. But under this very scheme, we are getting this facility at a single digit, and that has actually reduces, you know, the cost of funds that the farmers will normally get at the bank. So we onboard these farmers using our own app. You onboard them using our own app, and then we have extension workers that are providing these services, you know, for us. If you look at the extension workers in Nigeria today, the ratio is so large that it is at 5,000 to 1. That is one extension officer to 5,000 to 10,000. Yeah, that is how it is. So we have that dearth of extension. And that is one other areas in which we saw that the smallholder farmers lack at that very level. So we provide extension services, and the ratio has been narrowed to about 1 to 200 extension officers, and we could even do more. So we onboard them, and we provide training for them on GAP, on financial literacy, on negotiation skills, and the like of it. At the end of the harvest, we offtake exactly the cost of the loan aspect that we give to these community partners, and we pay the bank. But before then, we are mindful of the fact that the community partners are very sensitive to cost. So we all sit down together and come up with an economy for production. So with the economy of production, we approach the bank, and exactly what we develop with them, it is what we give the bank, and then we also get these inputs and give it to the smallholder farmers. We on-lend to them. The only charges there are the management fee, which the bank would normally charge, as well as the interest, which I said is at a single digit. So the excess produce from the farmers we offtake as well, because we have the facilities at the various local government areas at which we are working. So we warehouse those produce there, and then we sell, and then we pay the bank, like I said. But one other niche which I want to say here is, at the time of harvest, when we want to set a price, we all sit together with with our community partners and agree on the price in which we are going to offtake. Yeah. So when we agree, we pick a price. We as an organization put a premium price on top of that, so that we encourage them to produce more. So with that, we have been able to achieve over 90% recovery every year. Yes. Let me pause here. Yeah.
Thank you, Ezekiel, for that and for highlighting, the challenges that you've talked about. But also more interesting for me has been hearing how Palm Valley is actually addressing those challenges. And I hope for others in the room as well, they're taking note of that. And as just a natural transition, I know you mentioned value chain development. And so I'd like to come to Joshua and ask, how can value chain development initiatives be used to enhance competitiveness of our African products?
Thank you very much. Let me say good morning to everyone. And I'll also try to say the good morning in a few languages. So, Ekaro, Inakwana, Ututu, I hope I pronounce it properly. So, but in the other African languages, I will say Molweni. That would be good morning in Xhosa language in South Africa. And Ninjani is also a greeting. Abari, I think that's East Africa greetings, and Sava, that's in French. So, morning everyone. My name is Joshua Oluokun. I'm the head of Agri-Business at SE Holdings in South Africa. I'm a son of the soil. Even though I've been in South Africa for 20 years, but I don't forget my roots. So that's why I'm here with my team from South Africa as well, to explore the opportunities that exist in Nigeria and other African countries. So as human beings, we have a gift that God has given us, that is to dream. So we're going to have two dreams here today. I think, let me do this exercise. You should probably close your eyes for 20 seconds and imagine yourself as a farmer. What do you see? How do you see yourself? Do you see yourself being stressed? Your revenue is not what you anticipated to make. You can't afford basic needs. If that's your dream, then you need to dream again, because there is a better reality out there. And if you dream again, you can actually dream yourself as a farmer, whereby you are able to send your children to Harvard. You're able to send your children to Yale University. You're able to go on holiday and be by the beach and experience good life, because that exists. And not just in America or Europe, even within Africa, that exists. When you have a chance, you should Google NAMPO 2024. It's an agricultural event in South Africa every year. You will see farmers flying in over 700 planes for this conference. So I anticipate a day when Agri Council will organize an event in Nigeria and they say Muritala Mohammed is packed because the farmers are here with their private planes. Because it exists and it can happen. But for it to happen, we need to migrate our farmers from just being smallholder farmers to become commercially viable. It's a reality that can come to pass, but it needs everyone in this room, government, private sector, to play their role. Just looking at some few statistics, if you compare smallholder farmers in Africa versus smallholder farmers in like USA or Europe, there's a huge gap. In Africa, you probably have one commercial farmer to 50 smallholder farmers. In the US, you probably have 1 to 22 thereabouts. In Europe, maybe 1 to 9. But the irony of it is, a smallholder farmer in the US, you are looking at an annual revenue of over $350,000. And that is considered a smallholder farmer. If you take that to Naira, that's over 500 million Naira in terms of revenue. So, and that person is seen as a smallholder farmer in the States. In Africa, when we say smallholder farmer, maybe it's a farmer that is making just $1,000 revenue per annum. So, we need to do a lot. We need to do something. We need to change the story. And part of the changing of the story is the value chain development. And value chain development will require a whole lot of things. We've talked about low productivity, which is one of the challenges of smallholder farmers. I mean, the adoption of fertilizer, that was discussed yesterday by the Olam CEO, to say what is the adoption rate of fertilizer use in Africa. It's very low. And agriculture is what you input determines what your output will be. Many farmers, even before planting, hardly do their soil test. And even when they do their soil test, they only test for the macronutrients, NPK. Agricultural productivity is more than just NPK. There are other micronutrients that you test for. So in South Africa, for example, we use labs whereby they are able to look at your calcium level, your boron level, your magnesium level, sodium level in the soil. Because a higher rate of those micronutrients or a lower rate of it also determines the absorption rate of the plants, of the nutrients in the soil. So farmers need to understand that it's not just applying NPK. It's not just applying urea that helps them to increase their productivity. So part of the thing we do at SC Holdings in South Africa is we provide those technical support to our farmers on the ground. We ensure that before they plant, that we have taken into consideration everything that needs to be done from an agronomic point of view, so that if there is a challenge at the end, if there is a crop loss, we'll know that everything humanly possible we have done on our side. And we're able to guarantee our off-takers. So similar to my brother here, we also operate such a model. We operate an aggregation model as SC Holdings. We create market linkages for our farmers. We are one of the aggregators for one of the big brands in South Africa called Tiger Brands, where we supply them a lot of grains, a lot of oil seeds and beans, and also vegetables. So they trust our process, that we are able to get the farmers to do the right thing in terms of the agronomic side of things. From the climatic point of view, we have environmentalists as well within our team that looks at the climatic condition of an area before the farmer plants. Because all of these factors determines the productivity level of the farmer. So before we can even talk about value chain, we need to establish that high productivity level. Because if government decides to put a chicken abattoir somewhere here now, if there is not enough production in that region, before you know it, the abattoir will be shut down and it becomes a white elephant. So as we are thinking about value chain development, we must also look at the production side. And looking at the production side then means we need to look at our farmers. We need to have an inclusive farming environment. We need to have the women involved in agriculture. We need to have our youth involved in agriculture. Our youth should not see agriculture as what their grandfather or the way their grandfather used to do it. I come from also a farming family. My grandfather was a bean farmer, a cocoa farmer. So I knew how he used to do it in the 90s, that you can't do farming in this generation in that regard. So low productivity is one of the challenges of value chain development. Improper infrastructure is one of the challenges in value chain development. So infrastructure is very critical in terms of you being able to be competitive out there. The era of hoe and cutlasses is over. It's mechanization, advanced mechanization that farming systems are using. For example, with us as SC Holdings, we own our own mechanization that we deploy to assist our farmers. It doesn't come cheap. So a farmer that is doing 2 hectares or 3 hectares, if you ask him to invest millions or billions of naira into buying tractors or harvesters, when will he be able to repay the loan? So sometimes when you are in a cluster group as smallholder farmers, it gives you that advantage to be able to have a pooling of resources within your organization to be able to acquire those assets and be able to deploy it to the services of your farmers. That also helps in terms of productivity level. So other things that inhibit value chain development is high transaction cost. Those are areas where we need to have different initiatives to be creative in the way production cost, transaction cost are being utilized. So now, how do then value chain development assist African farmers to be competitive out there? First, the value chain development, we need to look at value chain development around quality. Quality is very key. If you want to send your product to the US, to European countries, even within Africa, quality is very important. I will not mention the African country now, but part of what we do, as I mentioned, is we aggregate and we supply big brands. And we took some produce from an African country last year and even early this year, which was rejected when it got to Tiger Brands. Why? Because the sample sent and the product delivered are totally different. The quality was very poor. And because they process food, their name is attached to it. The brand awareness is there. So they can't just process just anyhow product for the consumers to eat. So that was rejected. And I don't blame the country because probably they don't have cleaning and grading facilities in their country, but they want to export. So one of the areas then is quality assurance in terms of your grading, in terms of your cleaning facility, to make sure that before you export your product, I think the earlier session, the chairman of the Export Council was talking about specifications. That's very important for farmers to understand the specifications that the buyers, they want to see. So for example, if a farmer wants to subscribe to us, we give you ahead the specifications to say this is the cultivar we're looking for, this is the percentage level of foreign matters that can be in your product. If it's above this particular level, we reject your consignment. So farmer needs to have an understanding, and sometimes it's the responsibility of us as aggregators as well to train these smallholder farmers to coordinate their activities and make sure that they produce correctly according to the specifications that we are giving them. So quality is very important as a value chain development initiatives, market access through aggregators, individual farmers that are doing 1 hectare, 2 hectares. You can approach big brands. For example, Olams does not have time to deal with a half a hectare farmer. But if there's an aggregator that is a conduit between the big brands and the farmers, but the aggregator also must be fair to farmers. So I'm advocating for smallholder farmers, that as aggregators, we need to also be fair to the farmers. We also, as aggregators, need to understand the cost of production of the farmers, so that when you give a price offer to these farmers, you are not kicking them out of production the next cycle, because now they are struggling to cover their production cost. So even the buyers themselves need to understand how much does it cost to produce a maize per ton in Nigeria before you even offer a price to the farmers. Do you even understand the challenges these farmers go through? And are you able then to give them a competitive price that will ensure that the continuity of their business? So market access is very key. Policy directive is also very key. Regional coordination is very key in terms of value chain development. Value addition itself. So, for example, with vegetable farmers, you need a pack house, you need a cold room. That cold chain is important. You can't send your produce overseas, and by the time it gets there, it's already withered. So there are certain level, there's a certain temperature level that produce must maintain before it gets to the destination. So these are areas where initiatives whether by government or whether by the private sector, needs to be implemented in each and every country in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. I'd like to ask Dr. Emmanuel about technology. I know in 2024 we cannot ignore the role of technology in helping us solve a lot of our problems in many ways. But in this specific way, in this specific topic around, helping smallholder and medium-scale farmers become more commercially viable, what are some of the most technologically advanced, what are some of the technological advancements that could play a role in this, and how can that be?
Yeah, good morning, and thank you again, Grace. I am from the African Agricultural Technology Foundation in Kenya, and we focus on technologies, and we understand that agriculture in Africa is driven by smallholder farmer. But I would like to acknowledge GIZ for the opportunity to be here and for giving us the platform to be able to talk about how we partner one another. The question is quite very broad, especially from the mission of my organization. And we are deploying all kinds of technology. However, these technologies, like you said, they range from improved productivity. Yesterday we saw the presentation, very good presentation, where they were comparing the average productivity global level and Africa. We were always just low. So we're deploying all kinds of technologies, biotechnology, hybrid technology, and that's what we are doing. Of course, we have climate change now, and you need to develop materials that are resistant to all kinds of. Climate change is quite big. It affects biotic stresses as well, not just abiotic. What I mean biotic stresses is that they affect pests and diseases as well. However, drought resistance, water. African agriculture is rain-fed driven, not irrigated. So that's a problem we have to look. But if you don't have that infrastructure, the farmers still need to grow, and you need to look for materials that are highly adapted. One of the key things I want to talk here, because yesterday they made reference to it, post-harvest losses. And we are partnering with GIZ on a project on mechanization and processing in Nigeria with focus on cassava. A lot of people eat cassava, but I don't know how much they know about the biology around the crop. That's a crop that you can harvest and put on the shelf and go away. You come back, your materials are lost. You lose that. So you need to bring in processing. Again, that we have negative trade balance in Africa with our international market, traders, other people. So that is also not good. And how do you address it? We discovered from time of 2000 to 2011, we were already importing things in $15 billion in net loss. And later, 10 years later, 30 billion. And if we don't control that, we will be hitting 100 billion. All right, so smallholder farmers are crucial, and we're losing a lot of things through post-harvest. So processing is very key. And most of the things you import are processed products. I don't know how many people easily relate cocoa with chocolate. They don't really do that. And again, we don't drive crops like that. For example, you have a lot of industries that require starch. And most of the starch comes from maize. But we have cassava that can really, really give you good starch. And so you must carefully select for technologies that will give you comparative advantage. It's not the yield. Of course, when you move your cassava from one location to another, you are actually in fresh state, you are moving it in just water, you are transporting water. But when you process it, you bring it down. And I was speaking with some women who were processing, and then they spend an average of 6 hours per day. And how much do they get? $1. Really, after that hard work? You don't need that. But with technology, so AATF has facilitated access to a technology that is so very efficient. You don't need to peel your cassava. You just throw it in, and the machine separates it. And it comes out with those 3 modules. It cleans it and brings it to fresh chips. You dry the chip, you mill it, and you have high-grade, high-quality cassava flour. All right? And most Nigerian foods in particular, some Africans are doing better than Nigeria. I'm a Nigerian though, but it's so sad that some countries take advantage of the demand driven by Nigerians outside Nigeria to buy Nigerian foods coming from other countries, like Ghana. Ghana really supply a lot of Nigerian foods because they don't meet quality internationally. So we need to address that and bring quality to what we do. This is a big subject I can't really talk much about here, but we need to strengthen the smallholder farmer. And the other thing we are also looking at with that technology, I'm talking of processing, is area of bioeconomy. You have a lot of crop residues and waste from cassava. How much do you turn into useful products, say from peels for feeds? And they are not ecologically also very good because you cause a lot of problems environmentally. But this machine will convert those peels into another secondary flour that can be used for livestock. So we have a lot of technologies. I can't really go into them. Technologies that are also very good for value addition related to health, nutrition. All right? The farmer will also need to be driven by traits that are demand-driven. So when you work on demand-driven traits, then your technology developers like breeders will work on demand-led breeding. So there have to be that connectivity there. Environmental stress is very, very, very top there on the agenda. So a lot of technologies that will help you stabilize, have good yield, help farmer to have market access, because you need to diversify trades also. You need to bring in new trades. Genome editing and biotechnology, I'm a biotechnologist as well as a breeder. They're also very critical. The technologies we also will need will also be talked about from the point of inputs, agro-inputs. All right? Yeah, my colleague just spoke about fertilizer. I heard of fertilizer. But I've also read from studies done in Africa, there is no correspondence between fertilizer application and productivity, which means you are using the wrong approach to solve a problem. You need to know what the soil needs. So soil health management technologies are also critical. But again, time is very brief. I may not be able to talk much about that because I can take each of them and release them. But I want to see the smallholder farmer move away from subsistence agriculture into commercial agriculture. The reason is this: you don't find a reason to adopt technologies when you are in subsistence agriculture, and you are not driven by profit, and you don't tend to do things properly. But we need also to develop infrastructure. People are talking of roads, people are talking of many things, but none of them is talking about data. How do you apply your technologies when you don't have data? I should be able, with good algorithm on my system, be able to advise. I just talk to a farmer, where are you? I go into my system, I do some calculation, and I tell him, this is what you need in that area. You have a lot of investment in the US on data that we don't have in Africa. So it makes things a bit very difficult. I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for that and for the passion. And I think we can all agree that this is a very wide topic and we'll definitely not be able to cover it all today. But before I go to the audience for questions, I'd like to ask one question to all of us, if you could answer in like a minute or less. In your areas of specialization, what are some of the most effective policy changes or policy uptakes that you've seen? So from a technology perspective, from a smallholder perspective, from a value chain development perspective, what are some of the most effective policy implementation have you seen that has helped to move this forward and to improve the commercialization of smallholder farmers? Maybe we could start from that end. So Dr. Emmanuel, and then come in this way. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's another question again that is highly debatable. I have always believed there are good policies on the continent. And I wish to state also that how you implement your policies is also crucial. So you could have a beautiful policy, But if you don't implement it well, it won't be very effective. There are some good policies, but again, I would tell you about issues that we must be very mindful about. And one of the most effective policies, I think they already spoke about them, like zero rating VAT, tax breaks, all those things are very good. And unfortunately, like one on machineries, we don't produce machinery in Africa. We're still trying to do so. A lot of them are imported. And we've seen that really demonstrated in countries like Zimbabwe. And also, if you look at things that might be related to seed systems, things like the use of other agro inputs, maybe fertilizers, those ones have been well demonstrated in Mozambique, even in Nigeria, inputs, seeds, fertilizers. We've received subsidies. Remember the time of additional, the e-wallet, fantastic. Those things have been also very good. And I think there are some good policies, but subsidies, like I said, again, is there. But I'm always very wary of saying subsidy. People will not like to hear that. But whatever policies you put on ground, make sure it is sustainable. Because you tell a farmer, I'm going to give you subsidies, and then tomorrow you have an economic crisis, you don't have money to give, what happens? So they must be trying to, I believe in good business models. Subsidies should be carefully used in some circumstances. One, look at the time we had COVID, all right? And if you have technologies you want people to onboard and they are skeptical, you can bring in subsidies. But when you tell them that to say your subsidy is permanent and people plan around that and then after a few years they don't get it, you get a slump. So always be mindful of sustainability. There have been some really good policies, but again, the issue of regional integration, those ones are happening now, but very slow, So implementation is fundamental, and I think having good political way to implement those policies will be crucial. But there have been very, very good ones, like the subsidies, like I just mentioned to you, tax breaks and so on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Coming from the perspective of policies in agriculture, we have a lot of policies that have been written on agricultural development in Nigeria. If you go to the various ministries, they are there on the shelf. But yet, if you go out to the field, those policies are not being implemented, just like what Doctor said. Political will is one of which. And then, more importantly, is the change of government. Most times in, can I say Africa? But let me come down to Nigeria. We discover that once a government change, they tend to change their policy towards agricultural development. It has happened before. I remember during the time of Babangida, there was this agricultural development program they called NALDA. I was a staff of NALDA at that time, and I know what impact NALDA was bringing to the smallholder farmers. Unfortunately, when I think it was Obasanjo now, when he came, I don't know whether he actually studied what NALDA was. He then scrapped NALDA. Recently, NALDA has been brought back to the ministry. So all these policy somersaults that we are having in the country doesn't really help agriculture at all. Talking about the GES program is good, it was good, but the implementation was also poor, and they didn't even target, the market. It was all about production. What we are doing now as investors in the agricultural value chain, we are actually adopting those models, all right? Even the Uncle Borrower's model is what we are adopting, and it's working for us. So why can't government be deliberate about it and make sure that this thing works?
All right, closing from my side. So when we talk about policy, it's not just policy, also the programs that ensures that this policy is adequately implemented. So we need to have policies that ensure inclusiveness, women inclusiveness in agriculture, because they play a very vital role in food security. So also policies that ensure easy access to finance for farmers, because farmers can't do what they want to do without affordable funds. It's very, for me, when people were telling me yesterday that for you to get a bank loan at 27% in agriculture, that is not developmental. So government also needs to come up with policy that will probably ensure that all the big corporates in Nigeria, the banks, that a percentage of their books is dedicated to agriculture. I mean, food inflation rate over the last year in Nigeria is 40%. That's crime against humanity, sorry. At 40% rate of inflation. I mean, a country like South Africa, a few years ago, food inflation rate was 14%. Now it's dropped down to 7% or 6%. So Nigeria needs to learn what is other African countries doing to reduce food inflation. Because a hungry society is an hungry society. So there's so much that the government needs to do, but not just the government, also the private sector. So in developing policy direction, the private sector also needs to have an input into that policy. So there needs to be a collaboration between government and the private sector, and also policy that ensures quality and safety standards needs to be implemented. The last 1 week now, they said there's cholera in Lagos. From what? From people drinking kunu. Quality issues and health and safety issues. So government needs to play a role, and the private sector also needs to play its role. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We just have time for 2 questions only from the audience. So I think there's a question on that end. Where? Oh, there's a hand here at the front.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. It's not really a question as much as my founding. When we're talking of fertilizer and the farmers avoiding using fertilizer, most of the farmers complain about the effect on their product after some time. And they were saying that normally if they don't use fertilizer, like for yam, cassava, and other things, that they stay, like keeping it for a longer time. But when they use fertilizer, they realize that after about 3 months or so, that they can't actually store this thing for a longer time. So what do we do about that? For you people that are into technology and what do I call? So to make sure that I am thinking if we go into organic fertilizer it's going to help in whatever they are doing. I think so. Because I remember those days, you plant, and we have bands in my village that my uncle will put that, and it will last for the following planting season. The yams will be there, and you can eat it. So I don't know what's going on now.
Okay, thank you very much. I think let me talk on not on cassava, but on a similar rhizome.
I still want to.
Okay, cassava. Okay,
No,
maybe.
no, I'm not talking. I still have something I wanted to say.
Oh, okay.
mentioned something on subsidy. Right now, I will mention the country, unlike you. Ghana, they're having issues. They had drought early this season, and the government promised them to subsidize their fertilizer. Right now, they're not getting it, and the farmers are still waiting to get the subsidy from them. So the government is not really in Africa helping matters for farmers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just want to share an experience based on what she said concerning the shelf life of cassava. Maybe due to fertilizer, I don't know. I'm from a ginger producing area in Kaduna State. Last year we had a serious challenge, an epidemic, so to say, on ginger, and it affected the productivity. And I think almost 1,000 hectares of ginger was lost due to that very epidemic. Up to now, we have not really come out with a solution to whatever happened last year. But there has been speculations concerning the use of fertilizers over and over again. Talking about sustainable agriculture, most farmers that are producing that particular crop do not practice crop rotation, and the heavy use of chemical fertilizers. Coming from that angle, from the rural setting, once you produce ginger, ginger can stay for another 1-2 years off the shelf. But now, with the use of chemical fertilizers, if you harvest your ginger and you keep it, we don't keep it in a proper storage perspective, you are likely to lose almost 30% of your ginger. So there has been that speculation linking it to the use of chemical fertilizers, and therefore we are advocating for the use of organic fertilizer, integrated soil fertility management. And to buttress that fact, some of the farmers that did not apply chemical fertilizers on their farm last year, they did not experience much of that very particular disease that affected the farmers. So I don't want to categorically say that the use of chemical fertilizer is not good, because if you are looking at productivity in this country today, the population of Nigeria is getting towards how many? Almost 300 or thereabout. Without the use of chemical fertilizer, I don't think we can produce enough food. But I'm not an expert in that area, so I'm going to allow the doctor to talk more about that.
So I don't know whether I have time to respond to you very well. So the issue here is this. Cassava basically will still produce for you without fertilizer. But cassava does respond to fertilizer application. You will not keep cassava beyond 48 to 72 hours. Cassava stores very well in the soil, all right? It's a physiological process. But if, for example, they get eaten up by animals on the field, you expose that, and then you trigger up some physiological processes in the crop, and the many things begin to change, and it goes bad. But for yam, I know there is a study that says too much nitrogen could affect storage. All right? So the problem farmers are having in the country is that the government is not putting enough money around extension systems. And varieties do differ. Varieties do differ. And so they will require different approach. But unfortunately, like somebody said earlier, you don't do fertilizer, you don't do soil test. So you just apply fertilizer. So that I just said it just now. It's not corresponding. You can't do commercial agriculture where you are putting in nutrients that your plant does not require. All right? But even if you look at the soil, there are other elements which I cannot be discussing in scientific terms here. Your cation exchange capacity, your organic matter levels, and the nutrient ratios levels all affect how your crops go. So we need to improve the extension systems so that they can relate with farmer directly, guide them, put up systems in place. So your question is quite very big. But if you want to go into organic fertilizer, I would say rather, because of the climate change and other thing, we need to find another kind of fertilizer. There are biological fertilizers you can apply, all right, onto the soil. But if you are looking for those old organic type of fertilizer, you will not move anywhere, because you are talking of thousands of hectares, millions of hectares. Where will you generate sawdust? Where will you generate all those residues from? It's not just going to work. It's having your technology and appropriately applying that technology to your needs to address your problems. Thank you.
Okay, just to also emphasize what my colleagues here have said. So, before planting, I will reiterate it again that you do soil test. Even during planting, you do leaf analysis. I'm not sure if that capacity exists in Nigeria. You do leaf analysis of your crops, because from that leaf analysis, you'll be able to see if the plant is actually uptaking the nutrients that you have applied in the soil. And there are other factors that determines the uptake of fertilizer. The EC level of the soil itself also determines if there's too much calcium in the soil or too much salt in the soil, it affects the uptake of fertilizer. So there are a lot of science that goes into productivity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this panel owes me $100 each for exceeding your time by exactly 20 minutes. But I will meet you down when we finish from here to collect my money in cash. Okay, so without wasting more time, you will agree with me that they have done justice to this topic. And if you think they have, please let me hear you say, yeah, yeah. See, please put your hands together for this amazing panel. I want to thank my panelists and my moderator for doing a very good job. Please step forward for pictures. If you do have any extra questions for my panelists, please feel free to meet them at the back at 2 o'clock when we are having lunch, or visit their exhibition booth and stands to ask them further questions, and I'm sure they'll have enough time to explain. They are all staying here with us till 2 o'clock.